Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Product for Product. It's Matt and Moshe. Thanks for tuning in this week. We're continuing our series on in-app messaging by discussing the tool Userpilot. We're also excited to have Akshay Kulkarni on the show to discuss his work in product management and his experiences with Userpilot. Welcome to the show, Akshay. Thanks for joining us today. Let's take a sec to introduce yourself.
Yep, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Moshe, for having me here. So quickly to introduce myself, I'm a product manager at a company called Haptik. And Haptik, what we do is we enable businesses and their users to have seamless conversations. So we use AI to make sure they can have conversations with each other. That's essentially what we do. We have a developer platform that a lot of developers use to build out these conversational AI products. Prior to this, I have an engineering background, so I've done a little bit of engineering at Microsoft and a few YC startups. But right now, I've been doing product management for about 3 years, trying to build platforms for developers. Right, essentially, that's my background.
Cool. So tell us a bit about what we're here for today. Userpilot. You've been, I think, using it for some time. Tell us a bit about, the process of selecting. I think you told me before that you were part of the selection process for that. How did you select it? Why did you select it? And some use cases where you were using it.
Got it. Great. So before I get into how we got into the Userpilot selection process, I think I'll set a little bit of background about how we even got to the place where you wanted a tool like that. I think that will serve as a good talking point on why Userpilot stepped in. So the Haptik platform that we have, initially it started out as an internal product. So we have a services team which was using this product internally for about almost like 3-4 years now. Before I joined, they've been using it internally. But over the course of last year or so, we decided to open up the platform and make it available for everybody in the world to just come and log in and start using it. One issue that we realized was because we had built this platform for internal users, we had never optimized for usability or UX, if you could say it that way, because we were like, it's an internal use case and it's an internal team. So we'll always train them to use it. Like we get them to go through like a 1-day, 2-day training session where we teach them how to use it and they start using the platform. The moment we decided to open up our platform, we realized that's not going to work, right? Like we can't make everybody who signs up on the platform go through a 2-day training session to use our platform. And that is where we coined this term called people plus content plus product. We were like, we're building a platform which is very complex and we can't get away from the fact that it's a complex platform. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to help other people build AI. So it's going to be complex. The way we solve for this is we build some product UX around it, but we also leverage content and people, which is, can we put the right documentation in? Can we put the right sort of tours inside our product? How do we make sure we are able to simplify the product for other people? And we wanted to leverage content. And at the end of the day, we also wanted to have some sort of people involved in it. That is where the whole decision to build experiences and tours into the product came in, which is how do we automate the training experience? Like how can we make sure if I'm not on the call to train someone, how do I make sure somebody who signed up on the product is able to learn the platform in an easy way? And that is how our journey to discover such products started. So once we went down that route, we started looking at how do other companies solve for this? How do other product-led companies solve for this? And the first thing we found was Appcues. Surprising. That was the first tool that we found. And it was also something that we got a lot of recommendations from the community, right? We had a lot of consultants working with us, making this strategy shift. And all of them suggested that, hey, we've used Appcues in the past, so you should go with Appcues. And that was our first bet. So we got an Appcues account. We even spoke to Appcues. We loved the product, which was like, it helped us build guided tours inside our platform, which is like, I can have like modals and pop-ups come up all across my tool and explain the platform in an easy way. And that is how we started exploring this. We got into Appcues. And I was a person responsible for the success of this overall project. It's still an ongoing project. So which is where it was up to me to decide whether we go with Appcues or do we build in-house? So the first sort of decision that we had to take was, do we go with Appcues or do we build this in-house? That was the first decision that we had to take. And we just looked at what all the features that Appcues already gave us, which is allowing us to build it in a no-code fashion, having like analytics being out of the box. And all of those features made it pretty clear for us that it would make no sense for us to build all of that in-house. And we pretty much closed on Appcues. Sorry if I'm rambling on. Feel free to interrupt me.
No, this is actually
Yeah.
perfect.
This is really helpful.
Like a product manager, you are telling a story. So, we love telling stories and we love hearing stories. So I like that progression of what you went through. What happened that made you start looking at Userpilot?
So we almost closed on Appcues. And one thing we realized was one of the use cases for our platform was we wanted to have the guided tours and experiences be very contextual, which is if we, like, for example, we have a feature where users can go in and write some Python code into the platform. We were like, if somebody's stuck at that point, I want to start an experience. I want to show some sort of guidance at that point. And so we realized that will be very critical for us, being able to trigger, having a lot of flexibility on where we trigger these experiences. And when we look at Appcues, although it had that functionality, it was in their highest payment plan. It was in the enterprise plan, which was, there's nothing wrong with an enterprise plan, but it's also a hidden pricing which says contact sales. So we were okay with that, but at that point it was like, can I find something better where I have more flexibility over triggers, and I don't have to go down the route of talking to sales, having an enterprise contract set up, and all those things.
I see.
And that was the first point we started looking at alternatives. We found a bunch. We went through Userpilot, Pendo. I think there was another one as well. I remember the name right now. But there were like 3 or 4 that we went through, and Userpilot had a lot of flexibility on where you can set up triggers. And another good thing with Userpilot was, like, I clicked on get a demo, and immediately there was a person who got on a call with me. They gave a 14-day free trial, and they assigned a CSM, if I remember correctly. They assigned a CSM, and they said, if you have any issues, you can get on a call with this person and get it sorted out.
And you like that? You like that type of interaction with them?
Correct, because it helped build a lot of confidence, because this is the first time we were trying to use a product like that, and we weren't sure if we were making the right calls. Having someone to validate some of our ideas was very helpful. In fact, when we had the first call with the CSM, we showed them our designs, saying this is how we want to improve our UX. This is where we think Userpilot should get in. And they made a few suggestions on, okay, this is how you could put in Userpilot. So it was a very consultative process. And all of this was even before we had signed an agreement or like converted to a paid customer with them, right?
Well, that's nice. That's one of the questions we often ask is how's the relationship with the company? So it sounds like you had a really good kickoff experience.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think that was the biggest deciding factor for us.
Wow.
The fact that there was someone available for us to bounce off ideas and get something clarified. Because it's really painful if it's like if you're just talking to a machine all the time, right? Like I'm sending email.
And you know what? This is a really great point, because as much as we want to use great products and companies want to provide great products, it's not just about the product. It's also about the interactions and the support and the communication and are they reactive and are they really helpful for you? And I've seen companies that fail or succeed because of that. So that's very, very nice to hear.
Yeah. In fact, it was validation for our own strategy, right? Which is what I said. Like we wanted it to be product plus content plus people. It was validation for us that having people involved in your product-led strategy is very critical to like help your users get confidence in your platform.
I see. So it also matches your culture and your the way you like to do things.
Correct.
Which is also really interesting. We had another discussion the other day. We didn't release that episode yet with product manager from LinkedIn, and we were talking with him about, and he also used to work at Atlassian. So this episode will come soon. But we're talking about, how the culture impacts how you do things with the product that you're using and stuff like that.
Yep.
So this is really interesting to hear what you just said just after that discussion. So you went through the evaluation of Userpilot, and from other than their support and their constant help that they gave you, and also their price range and allowing you to do this more granular messaging as you needed in the application, are the other features of the product, are they up to par or better or worse than what you've seen with the Appcues?
I think most of the features are on par, like the basic features, right? Like being able to build guided tours, having checklists. I think they are at par. In fact, I would say Userpilot probably gives you more flexibility in terms of how you configure them, and like I think configurability wise, Userpilot is a little easier to use. especially with even things like increasing the width of the mural that I'm creating or decreasing the width, increasing the height. So they have like non-CSS controls for a bunch of this, whereas in Appcues, you have to go write CSS for all of this. And I think one feature that really wowed us, and like we were not even looking for that feature, right? Like was the ability to put tooltips inside your platform without writing any code. That was something that we did not find in Appcues. I'm not sure if it's there, but at least while I was exploring Appcues, I could not find it. The ability to just say, okay, I want to put a tooltip at this place. I want to put a tooltip. I think Userpilot calls it native tooltips. So you can put an eye or a box next to any element in your website, and you can be like, okay, when user clicks on this or hovers on this, I want to show something.
I see. So you can do it with the Userpilot, but you didn't find it in Appcues.
Yeah.
This is another scenario of using Inapp messaging, because Inapp messaging is really just another element that is popping up on the screen by different triggers. So a tooltip is one of those type of triggers, and why not have it as part of that product? So that's great to hear that they have that.
Correct. And to be honest, we were not even looking for that, because we were like, okay, in our heads, it was like, okay, this is something we'll have to build as we're building our website. But to see it available, that was great. It was like, okay, we're not even looking for this, but it's still there.
It's something you hadn't even thought of, so that's even more beneficial to you, for sure.
That's a delighter, I would guess, for you.
Correct,
Cool. Yeah, and it definitely, and I like the approach that you have of if someone else have built it and we can implement it and integrate it into our system, then we don't need to build it ourselves, and we can focus on the core of our product. And tooltips is one of those things that sometimes you want to add or remove or change or whatever. So why kind of waste the time of the developers to do that if you can use a tool like this?
Yeah, like because your engineering time is really precious, and you want to use it on core features of your platform versus ancillary features.
Tell us a bit about, have you already went live with this, and did you create like some onboarding flows for the users using Userpilot?
So fun story around this. After we made the payment, we realized that there's another product team inside our company who's already been using Userpilot for a couple of months. We found this 4-star evaluation and going live. And Userpilot team was like was very supportive here. They were like, hey, we've realized that there's 2 accounts from your company. We're okay with like canceling the payment on one thing, refunding that amount, and make sure you only have 1 account. So the other product has been live for a while. They've been live with experiences for around 2-3, more than 3 months now. On the product that I work on, we are still testing the flows that we built out with users, but not yet live.
But it's actually great for you to have someone in-house that you can bounce ideas with, because one of those things about onboarding flows, it's almost like there is a bit of a science and a bit of an art in it, because you want to have just the right number of steps. You don't want to have too many steps. You don't want to have just not enough steps, so people will not get the value from it. So that I always find it as something that it's like your product. You start with something and then you iterate on it until you get it perfect.
Yeah, it's definitely something we have to iterate on, which is where the power of Userpilot actually comes in, right? Which is I don't have to go to my engineering team to keep making these changes. As a product manager or as a designer, I can play around with it, look at analytics, saying, okay, at step 8, a lot of people fall off. So I'm going to make sure I only have less than 8 steps, for example. And the other point you said is super precious for us, because now I can go to the other product team and be like, okay, what are your learnings from Userpilot?
Definitely.
What is the optimum amount of steps to have? So there's a lot of learnings that is available for us. And it just happened for us without us knowing. It would have been really bad if we found out they were using Appcues. That would have been a bad place to be in.
Very interesting. Do you have other use cases that you're planning to use Userpilot for? In the past, Matt and I discussed, lots of different scenarios for that. Some of them are more marketing related. Some of them are more user, education related, like you mentioned to onboard and tooltips and stuff like that. Some of them are just announcement of new features. Some of them are communicating with the users, like giving them polls and stuff like that.
So right now we're focused a lot on building directors, and we also plan to use it for some sort of announcements. And you want to use it for in-app messaging, right? Which is if users are stuck on in some part of their building journey, we want Userpilot to step in and make sure they're on the right way. And this could be things like showing them a quick video on how to do something, or like pointing them to the right piece of documentation. That's one way you want to use. We also wanted to use it in a different way, but we couldn't. We couldn't use it that way. Like we wanted to use the checklist feature. So just a little bit of background on our platform. When you're building a bot, you use our platform to build bots. So it's a journey that you have to go through, and we have that journey split into 3 steps, 3 phases of it. Which is one. We say one is you build your bot, then you deploy your bot, and then you improve your bot. So we wanted to have checklists for each of these phases, and then have a central page where you can see, okay, where am I right now? What is my progress? We explored if we can use Userpilot for this. We even got on a call with them, showed our designs to them, saying, is there any way we can fit this in? But eventually it did not work out because the way Userpilot builds checklists and the way we wanted it was very different.
Having built bots before, I know that having those kind of in-app messaging along the way is very helpful for the user, because to your point, I mean, it can be a complicated system to create how you want it. So it sounds like Userpilot's really beneficial in these cases.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Tell us a bit maybe about the user interface of Userpilot, how easy it is to use. This podcast, our audience, they know it's audio only. There is no video available to see it, but try to explain to us a bit, from your perspective, the ease of use, or if there are areas that are not that easy, and stuff like that.
So I'll try to walk through what building a guided tour on Userpilot looks like, and then I can talk about what's good and what's bad. So just for context, a guided tour is an example of a guided tour. Let's say, I'll take a very simple example, right? Let's say you open Gmail for the first time. You must have seen these boxes that show you the different parts of the product, which is, there's a box that shows you the left panel and says, hey, this is where your menu is. You can click on these items. And then when you keep clicking next or go, it keeps shifting the boxes around. It basically takes you to the entire platform and explains the different parts. So that's what a guided tour is. And these things are critical when you're building a complex platform, right? So on Userpilot, they make it super simple for you to build these out. It's a very visual sort of way to build it. So you add a Chrome extension, you install a Chrome extension on your laptop, and then you open the website where you want to build this. For example, let's say I want to build it on google.com. So I can just enter google.com, and then the Chrome plugin will ask me, okay, what do you want to do at this point? I can click on any part of the website. I can say, I want to show a box here. I can enter any content, image, video that I want to put into that box. And then essentially I can keep adding more and more elements on this web page by just clicking on where I want on the website. So it's super straightforward. Anybody who knows how to use the computer can build out experiences, which is great. And then once you want to take it live, you just click on publish and it's live on your website. There's some installation process which you need your engineering help with, but that's a one-time process that shouldn't take a lot of effort. So that's great about it because it makes discoverability and building a lot easier. There's some learning curve to it, which is like trying to there's a lot of options that come in. Like the moment I say I want to put a box here, there's like 15 different types of boxes, and all have very technical names. So it's very hard for a non-technical person to understand, okay, which of these options make sense for me. So I think there's a little bit of learning curve there. But once you've learned what these terms mean and what you need, it's fairly straightforward post that.
Do you have the ability to define segmentation of users who is going to be seeing these in-app messages?
Yeah. So once you've designed your experiences, there's a separate section called triggers where you can decide who sees this. So you can either set it like, I want every user on my platform to see it once. I want all my users to see it all the time. And Userpilot also comes in with inbuilt segmentation. So when you install Userpilot, it starts tracking your users. So you can send it data like email, name, country, whatever data you want to send. And then you can build segments on top of it. So you can say anybody who is from this country. And there's a lot of flexibility on that. And all of this you can do without any engineering help, right? Like you can create a segment for users who are from a particular state, for example. And you can send Userpilot all this data, and then you can create these segments, and then you can trigger experiences based on the segments. So I can have guided tour only for people who are about 25, for example, assuming age is one of the factors I'm tracking. So that way you have full flexibility. But I think with flexibility, then there's a lot of responsibility on you as a product manager. to make sure you're defining the right parameters to track and the right parameters to set, which is where I think it's important for a PM to build some sort of a framework on top of this. So everybody in the company can start following it. Otherwise, it can get very messy if everybody is following their own structure.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that I've seen in this type of products, that you do have to have some discipline in there for people to manage the product and see how you work on it, that you're not messing up what other people did or create new things that already exist. So I usually do some naming conventions and stuff like that.
Yeah. In fact, one of the challenges that we're trying to solve is because this product will be used not just by me, but by 5 other product managers who manage different parts of our platform, right? We also want to make sure, because we're going to be doing a lot of in-app messaging, we want to make sure the copies are written the same way, because we don't want the tone of the copy to be different in different places.
Absolutely.
We talked about that before, Moshe, like competing messages within applications, people stepping on each other's toes to get information, I guess.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. I think what Akshay refers to is just the language itself, to make sure it's the same consistent language. But you're bringing a very good point, Matt, about not bothering the user too much, because there could be a lot of different messages coming up, and they will like, oh, this system is so spammy on messages. Do they have like a way to manage that in Userpilot, like throttling or some other means?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think. I think the responsibility is with the own admin of the account to make sure there's not a lot of cannibalization happening, essentially.
So you need to be aware of that and see and know exactly what's going on and which users are going to be impacted by all the different messages that are being defined.
Correct. Which is why we've realized it's important that even though there's like 7 or 8 people using it, there's one person who's just dedicated to make sure the overall experience comes together and there's not a lot of like cross cannibalization happening. And I think another interesting thing that, like, in fact, our head of design pointed out was it can be very tempting to just keep building more and more experiences to explain everything to the user and just spoon feed everything to them. But there are a lot of detrimental effects, which is the users will at some point feel like, am I not, like, do these people think I'm not smart enough to use the platform by myself?
Right. You gotta let them learn a little bit, go through the pain of learning a new system a little bit. Can't hold their hand the whole time. That's a good point.
Correct. Which is where I think it's a very subjective decision, which is like, how do you find the right balance between giving them enough pain so that they feel the joy when they learn it, versus it's just too painful that they're going to drop off.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because having done it in the past, going through documentation, I would have liked to have been engaged more on the platform. To have someone along the side of me per se. I think that would have added to the experience. Where I was just going back to documentation and trying to read documentation, trying to figure stuff out, which was good, but it was slower and more painful trying to build things out. So I think there's a really good case where in-app messaging can really heighten the experience.
Correct. And that is where having flexibility on triggers really comes in handy, right? Which is, I just don't want to show experience every time somebody opens a website. I want to have very smart way of triggering, which is, I know this person is stuck and they need help at this point. And only then will I trigger this experience.
Yeah, Moshe and I talked about that too before, how do you know if someone's stuck and where are they stuck at? That kind of leads into another question where I had, obviously working at a company where you have AI at your core, data and analytics is very important to you. So I keep thinking in-app messaging is a spot where analytics and insights in general from data is really powerful. So you did allude to your use of analytics from Userpilot before. Could you extrapolate that a little bit further?
Yep. So Userpilot gives you some analytics on how many people enter the experience, where did they drop off? Like, let's say you had 5 steps. So for us, it's critical to measure the entire funnel, right? Which is, if everybody's canceling the experience, it means like we're either bothering them or the experience itself is not useful. And we also try to track at what point do they break off. And the good thing is you can also filter these by segments. So I can look at things like, is the behavior different between users from US versus users from India? Maybe users from US are more open to having someone guide them through, and someone from India doesn't have enough patience to just go through all those guide tools, and they just want to get to the end of the chase. So I think analytics-wise, that's very helpful. And one more thing that we've set up is you can export all of the data to Mixpanel, because essentially what you really want to do is tie this back to your core analytics, which is this experience helping me drive my core KPIs, which is things like, are people publishing their bot into production? And can I tie these back to those experiences, which is where having the ability to push all of this to Mixpanel really comes in handy.
Oh, wow. So it has the integration to Mixpanel. I like Mixpanel quite a bit, so that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, so they have a lot of integrations out of the box, like you can do Mixpanel, Kissmetrics, Google Analytics, Amplitude, and all these. We use Mixpanel, so that was important for us.
Yeah.
Is there any type of integration between the systems? So information you collect on how people are using the Inapp guides, are they shown somehow in Mixpanel, or they have their own inside Userpilot?
So they have some basic analytics inside Userpilot, which is they show you how many people opened an experience and how many steps did they go through. But you can also, but that's the only sort of analytics that Userpilot has. But the integration in Mixpanel, what it does is it sends all these events into Mixpanel as well. It's a very one-directional sort of integration. So you can send all this data into Mixpanel as well. And now the advantage is, once these events are there in Mixpanel, I can compare them against other events that are happening on my platform, which is, does going through an experience lead to something else on my platform, is an important question for us to answer. Which is because, for example, like we might have all the users going through 5 steps of a guided tour, but none of them ever really test their bot, for example, which is a very bad thing for us. We want users to test their bots.
Right.
We want to tie it back to our core platform events, which is where having the ability to push it to Mixpanel is very critical.
Oh, great.
That's really insightful. I appreciate you bringing that up. That kind of goes back to the idea that we talked about again, Moshe, with Pendo, where Pendo has maybe all this in one platform, and something like Mixpanel specializing in analytics. You have Userpilot running the integrations between different companies doing different things. But yeah, this is just another good example of how that works out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. Can you tell us maybe quickly, the top 3 things that you like in the product and the top 3 things that you dislike in the product?
Sure. I think the thing that I like the most is the native tooltips. Just being able to put tooltips inside the platform is great. The second thing is, I think inside guided tours, they have this thing which I do not find Appcues, was something called driven actions, which is you actually force the user to take an action before they move to the next step. So they can't get away by clicking on next or anything. It's just that thing like you need to click on this button. So there's this feature called driven action, which is great. Third is, I would say, the flexibility with triggers. These are the top 3 features that I really like about Userpilot. What I don't like, I think, rather than 3, there's just one big item for us, which was checklists. So they're very rigid about the checklist UI. Like, this is the UI for checklist and this is how you use it. If checklist was available as a feature which you could use with any UI that you already have, that would be very helpful for us, because we want to make sure the checklist UI and everything matches our platform, and use Userpilot as a backend to power these checklists and make sure users are going through it. But that was not available. And would have been great to have that. I think it would have driven more value out of Userpilot for sure if we had that.
Yeah, so I do hope they listen to this now and hear your feedback.
Yeah.
I did see actually on their blog not a while ago, they wrote some very nice posts about comparing their product with other product, not so much in comparison, but more in what type of users would benefit each one of the products. So they did mention Appcues and Pendo over there. And it's really refreshing, and it's quite transparent how they make it transparent for users to tell users, you know what, it's not for everyone. Like, not every product fits everyone. I think they mentioned over there this item about checklist. So that's an interesting one.
No, yeah. In fact, we use those blogs for our own evaluation. We were like, wait, someone's already done the work for us to compare these products. Mm-hmm. I know it's a little from a biased, tinted sort of glasses, but after reading a couple of articles, I think, like you mentioned, it's pretty fair. They don't try to tell you that Userpilot is better than everyone, which is
I remember that article.
Gives confidence.
Mm-hmm.
We can rely on these articles to do some of our evaluation ourselves.
They want the customer to be successful, so they want successful customers, and I think that goes back to culture that we mentioned in the beginning of the show, just wanting people to succeed with the product. So I think that's really good.
Absolutely, and it's really refreshing to see because they are honest about it. So
yeah,
it's quite refreshing.
Yeah, they're not just worried about making the sale and onboarding new customers. They want you to achieve your goals with their product, and if they're not the best fit, then hey, there's some other ones out here. So it's pretty refreshing.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and in fact, being so honest, being so honest and transparent, actually helped us go closer to Userpilot versus go closer to some other competitor.
Yeah, and as Matt mentioned before, we usually ask this question about how is it to work with the company, and I think we already touched on that a couple of times before, and just now with the transparency, and they're willing to help you and make you successful.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have any other questions you would like to ask?
Yeah, just real quick. How was the transition from Appcues to Userpilot? I don't know if we covered that. Moving from one product to another, did you see a drop in production and drop in insights or something like that?
So for us, it was fairly straightforward because we hadn't gone live with Appcues.
Okay.
We're still using it internally. And the good thing was the builder, the Chrome extension that you have to build the experiences is fairly similar in terms of how you install and how you use it. So the people who were trained to use Appcues, they caught on to Userpilot fairly quickly because it was not very different. And I think that's where having an industry standardization helped us out. It would have been hard if Userpilot came up with some very different way of building things. So it was great that it was very similar to Appcues in that form. So that helped us transition fairly quickly.
Okay, well that's great. Yeah, that's all the questions I have. This has definitely been helpful. I really like the point where you mentioned you were looking to build a product in house, and you saw Appcues, and kind of it seems to be part of your culture where you're always trying to develop. But if there are tools that can do it for you, leverage those tools, focus on core features of your product, and I think that's a good message for the show.
Correct. Yeah. As a startup or as any company, I think your engineering is your most valuable resource, and you want to use it judiciously.
Well, thanks so much for joining the show, Akshay. This has been helpful, as I mentioned. Moshe, do you have any other questions?
No, I also I want to thank Akshay for joining us. I wasn't familiar with Userpilot. I think a few months ago, I didn't even know it exists. And then I started connecting with some people from Userpilot on LinkedIn, and I also liked what they were doing over there. Then I wrote a blog post for them for their as a guest for their blog. And when I learned what they're doing, I was like, oh wow, this is definitely a product that we should feature in our podcast. So I'm really happy actually that you joined us today and were able to talk with us about it.
Well, thanks. I'm glad I was able to have this conversation.
If anybody has any follow-up questions, where's the best place they can reach out to you?
So you can reach out to me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active.
Okay.
So the handle is someone_like_AK.
We'll share it also in the details of the episode.
Cool. I just ping it over to you on LinkedIn, but Twitter is the best way to reach me.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again. Been a pleasure, and thank you to all the listeners. We really, really do appreciate you listening in, and welcome any kind of feedback. And everyone, take care.
Take care, everyone.